Hey everyone, welcome to Victims and Villains. I am your one Marvel correspondent, Alan Cram.
I'm Josh Howell. Nice to see you again. I'm sorry I'm cutting you off.
No,
I'm
it's
just
okay.
so excited to talk about
the
this.
good news is we're recording this separately so I can fix it in post, which I will. Today is a very special episode for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. We have crossed over with not only my show, You Have to Watch This Podcast, but also the main show here on Victims and Villains podcast feed. Joining us from Victims and Villains is Captain Nostalgia himself, Josh.
What's up?
And from You Have to Watch This Podcast, Devin.
Hey everyone. Josh set such a good precedent for that intro.
Yeah.
I can't match it.
In this universe, Josh is just comically delayed.
Yeah.
That's
just leave that dead space in there for me, Josh. I appreciate it. So this episode's a little bit formatted differently. From this point on, this was all from a live stream we did over on You Have to Watch This Podcast's Twitch channel. So take it away past Alan, Josh, and Devin.
Do you also get tripped up in the fact that it's called in the and not and the?
Yeah. Every description I made today to promote the show, I had to go back and fix because I kept saying and the. So, but yeah. So before we get into Doctor Strange, I figured we at the top of You Have to Watch This Podcast, we usually talk about things that we've been watching. Just so happens all four of us watched a thing that we didn't get to talk about last week, and that was the finale of Moon Knight. So just real quick, let's go through and talk about our thoughts on Moon Knight as a whole and the finale.
So first, I want to know, does anybody here know anything about Moon Knight going into this? Because I 1,000% didn't. Did you?
Yeah, I read the 2014 Jeff Lemire run, and it's collected all in one beautiful graphic novel. If you live in the States, there is a service called Hoopla. You can get it from there for completely free. All you need is a library card. But I Googled most comprehensive run of Moon Knight to kind of have like an entry level to better understand the character. And not only is the art stunning, but the writing is really stellar. And if you want to better understand the series, I would recommend picking up that book.
Okay.
Yeah, I had every intention of watching or reading Moon Knight before the show came out. I didn't get to it. I have 2 volumes of Jane Foster's Thor sitting on the shelf behind me that I'm intending to read before July, but
Nice.
We'll see what happens. So I always try to do that, but I haven't, and I need to fix that.
I mean, we've already kind of talked. I shouldn't have talked so much behind the scenes about how I felt about it. I still believe what I said in the beginning, that this was clearly a good amount of money went into this series. It really looked good. Even the super CGI gods in the end at most points looked really good.
Mm-hmm.
Are we good to do spoilers, or are we? Does it matter? It's been out for a minute.
I mean, I can throw up the spoiler alert, so that's not a problem. Let's do that.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about spoilers for Moon Knight.
I mean, I thought that I am always one that says less is more. I think when you think back to shows that had 22 to 24 episodes, you were guaranteed that 17 of those at least were filler. So when this trend of coming down to 12 to 10 to 8 started coming about, that kind of encouraged this idea that you would get more quality than filler. So this show being 6, I was like, okay, they're really condensing it down. But honestly, going into the finale, I was like, how are they going to cap this off in a satisfying way? And I don't think they landed it. I think with the fact that season 2 was up in the air and has been up in the air since the beginning, and even the director coming out saying that this would all be a waste if they don't get a season 2, my response to that is, well, then maybe you should have finished season 1 a little better, just in case, you know?
Yeah.
Like, I don't like when a show like just leaves it open for the hopes of season 2, because 9 times out of 10, especially in today's world, you don't get it. And with as busy as Oscar Isaac is, and the fact that he made it clear from the get-go he wasn't going to sign one of those long-term I'm here when you need me Marvel contracts, I felt that the ending could have been better, or they could have used at least a 7th episode to wrap things up. So, yeah.
Josh, you got some?
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, I'm right there with Josh. A lot of the issues that he had, I also had, because there are things that happen in the last 2 episodes that kind of don't really get explained, or when you try to question it, it kind of makes the foundation of the narrative really kind of start to unravel. And there are things about it that I really like, again, coming back to that Jeff Lemire run, so much of these 6 episodes are so heavily inspired by those 14 issues that it makes it less than satisfying. And the fact that, like, Jake Lockley was left to a post-credit scene really, really got under my skin. Like, if there's anything else that bothered me most about this series, it's the fact that they saved him for last, because I heard a friend, we were talking about this yesterday, it's like, you took, like, you explained fairly well, and then you decided as your last-ditch effort, you're going to leave the box open, but yet confuse the audience one more time. And to me, like, I kind of would have liked to kind of see that personality come into play one more time. And also, like, what is Jake Lockley and Khonshu's relationship like? Because that was probably the most intriguing thing about that post-credit scene, and we're just kind of left with, like, all of these questions and no answers.
Yeah, I can agree that they left a lot up in the air for a finale. Like, I wish there had been a little bit more with Jake. I think exploring his relationship with Khonshu, I think, would be a great storyline for a season 2. But like Josh was saying, like, it is still up in the air if it's going to be a season 2. Like, I'm waiting for the day when I see memes on the internet of Poe Dameron saying somehow Moon Knight returned. But I really enjoyed Oscar Isaac in this. I still have questions about the show, like that little girl in the first episode that asked Steven about the Field of Reeds. Like, what the hell does that mean? It's very, there's a lot to unpack, and there's not many answers, but not that kind of show, Josh.
Ooh, we're getting a strip show. Yeah.
Maybe it is that kind of show now.
You're welcome. I gave you your wish, Devin.
Thank you.
I forget what I was saying. I'm so distracted.
Find my nipples.
I really enjoyed the Scarlet Scarab and the hair.
Yeah.
I think they did the Wonder Woman 84 costume better than Wonder Woman 84. So
Layla was great. She was great. Yeah. I thought she was great as a supporting actor, and I'm glad she got some time to shine there at the end.
Can I ask you something? Like, just kind of throwing this out there, because this is another thing, something we were talking about yesterday, is like, Layla gets a, like you guys saying, beautiful costume once she becomes like the Avatar. Obviously, we already know Steven and Mark, Moon Knight and Mr. Knight. How come Ethan Hawke's like character just never got an avatar? Like,
it's because he has all that glass in his shoes.
I forgot he did that.
You mean why doesn't he have a costume? Is that what you're saying versus the other two?
Yeah.
Like, why doesn't he have a? He's got the staff. I mean, maybe he was more. His whole vibe was I'm too humble to do anything. So maybe the staff was enough, and him having a costume would defeat his whole vibe or something. I don't know.
Maybe Ethan Hawke was just like,
also,
I'm not wearing a costume. So
that's what I think it is. And I don't know if you guys know this, a little bit of trivia for you. When they were deciding on who should be the antagonist, they basically compiled a list of every known antagonist that's ever faced off against Moon Knight in the comics. Mm-hmm. Picked Arthur, what's his last? It's like Harkness or something like that.
Harrow or something.
Harrow, yeah. Arthur Harrow. They basically just was like, this guy, his name just sounds cool. This is the guy. And apparently in the comics, he's only ever appeared in like 2 or 3 issues.
Yeah,
so he's not even like a main
he's
one.
Not this. No, he's not even this in the comics. They combined a few different ones and then they just slapped that name on there. But, I mean, I'm still of the notion that he's just one of the antagonists and that Kanju is still just as bad. At no point was I like, all right, he is good. Like, I feel like he's still a bad dude, and they teased Jake the whole season, and I can understand if big fans of Moon Knight were pissed, because I guess Jake in this show is nothing like the Jake in the comics. Like, the Jake in the comics is not the violent of the third. He's the taxi driver that kind of knows things, or at least in some of the storylines, he's not this murderous psychopath that they put in the thing. But then that's the other thing. Either if they do come back, they're going to have to reckon with the fact that he just killed all those people to get Arthur out of that nursing home, unless they flip it and they show the bodies and they have the little scales on them and it was actually Arthur's people that were protecting him. But otherwise, it kind of makes it look like he's just a murderous psychopath. And how does that work for Moon Knight being a hero if 1/3 of him is just like a straight up murderer, like he's a bad dude.
I think the better question there is, how does that work on Disney Plus? So,
it's also
well, we live in a post Netflix Marvel world now, so if they really wanted to, the safety locks and parental,
and that's true.
Controls are there.
If that was the case, they would have started that with season 1, though.
Yeah, I definitely
don't disagree.
Yeah, I really feel like they could have used a 7th episode. It didn't make sense where they stopped it here, and then the whole thing of Steven and Mark saying we don't want to be a part of this anymore, and then they go back to the mental asylum in their head, and their last line is, "We're gonna go save the world." Well, how are you going to go save the world? You don't have any superpowers anymore in your mind. I mean, They think that they're untethered from Khonshu. So how are they going to go save the world? They're just a mental patient at this point. They don't have any superpowers that they know of. So that didn't really make sense to me. It didn't feel like a, yay, send-off. It felt like an unfinished storyline. But overall, I still really enjoyed the show. I think that's why I'm mostly disappointed, not because I invested all this time and then there was just nothing. I think it really was because I really did like the show. I told Alan in the beginning, I really didn't want this to be bogged down with cameos. It felt like it deserved its own time, and it really did get its own time. We didn't see a ton of other characters in the background, and so I did appreciate that.
I think the only thing that they reference that's outside of this in the MCU is the astral plane from Black Panther.
Yeah.
So.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I heard rumor that there was supposed to be an Eternals cameo in this, and I don't think it would have done it any favors. No. I wouldn't have wanted it.
There's also rumors of a Bruce Banner cameo.
There were tons of rumors. There was rumors of a who's the God Butcher from the upcoming Thor movie?
Oh, Christian Bale.
Yeah.
Gore. In early drafts of this, when they weren't sure if this was going to come out before or after the new Thor movie, because it deals with Egyptian gods, there was rumors that he might be referenced to some degree, but clearly they didn't do
I even theorized that he might on our first half of the season review.
That's not to say that we don't like it's somehow like the events of this series don't show up in Love and Thunder.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
at some point they're gonna have to do like a tiers of gods because like I'm sorry, but like a 100-story alligator woman doesn't ring to me on the same level as lowercase g god Kurt Russell in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. He even he said God with the lower G. So like, where's the tiers? Where's the God tiers, and where do they all rank? I'm gonna have, and then we got the Eternals and the Celestials, and I'm gonna have to rank all those.
If you think about it too much, like Athena is supposed to be the basis for Greek gods, but Greek gods exist. It gets confusing.
Yeah.
Ow.
They're bringing it into Love and Thunder. Russell Crowe's supposed to be playing Zeus, if I remember correctly.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious about that.
All right.
Yeah.
I think that's enough of Moon Knight. So let's move on to today's main topic. Oh, hey, Ryan's in the chat. Hey, Ryan. All right, so let's move on to today's main topic, the latest cinematic entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Or should we start calling it the multiverse at this point, or not?
Please.
Not yet. Not yet. For me, not yet.
Okay. All right. Tonight we're talking about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Just came to theaters starring Benedict Cumberbatch, Elizabeth-Olsen, and directed by Sam Raimi. Which is why I'm dressed up, because Sam, if you don't know this about the first thing I learned about Sam Raimi was he always wore a suit to set. So I decided to suit and tie it up tonight.
He's a classy mofo, that guy.
Yes, he is.
Classy mofo.
Yeah. You also forgot that, Benedict Cumberbatch, and Benedict Cumberbatch also star in this.
All right, so yes, there are. It's funny that in the multiverse, Benedict Cumberbatch is every Doctor Strange, but Spider-Man is played by multiple actors.
Yeah, well,
ooh, that's a fair assessment.
Yeah,
it's we're how many films into the MCU or the MCM now? There's gonna be inconsistencies.
Oh yeah,
especially when Spider-Man is partly has got that Sony blood going in there. But in the effort to keep this first part spoiler free, I'm guessing we're doing spoiler free first.
Yes, we're going to do spoiler free first. So if you have not seen Multiverse of Madness quite yet, stay tuned.
Well,
you will know when we get into spoilers. I will put it on the screen.
And I would even say if you haven't seen some of the more recent TV spots, because those get super spoilery. But I just wanted to remind everybody what the original official synopsis for this film was when they announced it. It was Dr. Stephen Strange casts a forbidden spell that opens the doorway to the multiverse, including alternate versions of himself whose threat to humanity is too great for the combined forces of Strange, Wong, and Wanda Maximoff. I don't know what movie that is, but that is not this movie. So they must have just been going hardcore to hide who the main villain is, because even I went into this movie not knowing who the main villain is based on that.
Same.
I thought that what I really didn't want was going to happen, and instead I got what I wanted. We don't have to reveal who that is yet, but
I'm right there with you. Like I had my hopes for it. Like it's like they have to do it this way. Like if they don't, it makes no sense. And then they did the thing, and I was like, okay, yeah, like I was all in. I was like, let's do this. So we also had an opening weekend. Josh, go ahead. Like,
I hate the fact that this is being like titled like one of Marvel's greatest, because this movie had so much effing potential and it like squished it like an ant under a boot.
I cannot wait to hear more about this.
Who's calling it one of Marvel's greatest? I don't think.
Dude,
I don't think it's even top 10. Like, I think it's enjoyable, but I don't think it's even top 10.
I've talked to a lot of people online over the weekend and just kind of like gauging like what other people have thought about it, because I'm like, am I in the wrong for not liking this movie? And then like most of the people that I was talking about with was like, oh my goodness, this is like one of Marvel's like best movies that they've done in like decades or years, whatever.
I have seen a lot.
I just don't feel that way.
I'll give you that.
I think the more accurate statement is this is one of the more riskier movies Marvel has made in the last 20 years. Like,
for sure.
It's a horror
movie.
I
think it's safe at the same time. I think in tone it's risky, but I think a lot of the choices it makes are safe at the same time. I mean, there are times in this film where you're like, okay, yes, this is a Sam Raimi PG-13 horror movie, which has worked in the past. Sam Raimi can do a lot with the PG-13 restrictions. And he does push the envelope in certain parts of this film. In certain parts of this film, it really made me wonder, well, if Scott Derrickson's vision was too much, then what was he trying to do? Because he was trying to do a horror movie, and I thought Sam Raimi pushed the envelope a little bit sometimes in this film. Of course, there are other points in this film where it remembered it was owned by Disney Marvel and then brought that back a bit. So I think that was Sam got to shine at some parts and then was clearly roped and reeled back in at other parts that maybe hurt the film a little bit.
Yeah, I will say that this is the most ambitious movie Marvel has done. This and Eternals are like two of the most ambitious movies that they've done. And it's not to say that like, although I have my qualms with it, like I did thoroughly enjoy it. I thought that like it had its moments, especially as a horror fan and as a Sam Raimi fan. I really thought this movie makes a lot of really smart decisions. But like you're saying, Josh, like it's this, it can't escape the fact that it's a Disney movie at the end of the day. And it can't escape the fact that it is connected to the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe or Multiverse, whatever we want to call it, as a whole.
Well, I mean, I'm kind of with you guys where, like, I thought it was enjoyable. I don't think it was the best movie. But I don't know that I think the connections to the bigger MCU hurt it as much as that. I think that the connections to the bigger MCU, and especially what it did to the MCU as a whole, I think were interesting. And I think that for people like me, just without getting into spoilers, doing what they did is almost the only way to expand the MCU in the way that they did, to get people like me who are just skeptical and don't quite want to see it there yet on board with it. And we'll have to talk more about spoilers, because there are parts of this film that they do that are risky that I just never wanted Marvel to do. And I was like, I like Marvel when it's like this. I don't want it to look like these things, because I've seen some DC properties attempt some of the same things and not do it well. I mean, and to ruin a bit of the title, some of it is the multiverse. I think that they handle multiverse well in this film in a way that I don't think I've seen it done well. And that part I thought was interesting. I want all the feedback.
I think part of what some of the reaction I've been seeing online to this movie and some of the negative things I've been seeing, I think a lot of that comes from the expectations of having the word multiverse in the title. And I think when we get into spoilers, I can go into more detail on that. But I think expectations, when you have this come out after something like Spider-Man No Way Home, I think the expectations could be set so high that people are like, oh, this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this is going to happen, and this guy's going to play this guy who he was supposed to play in 2008, but they got somebody else instead. Like, I think there was so much of that a lot of the people, my brother included, like I said to my wife when we walked out of this movie, my brother who loved the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films and was really excited for this, he's like he was dead set on certain things happening. And I texted him when he was at the movie. I was like, so what'd you think? He's like, it was all right. But he was so excited for it, and he didn't get what he wanted, and like I think that's happening for a lot of people. And it's like, but it was never going to be that. So
there was a lot of hype and a lot of like tease and a lot of expectations and a lot of theories that I think a lot of people brought into the film. Honestly, I couldn't give a shit that we didn't see Tom Cruise as Iron Man in there. I know that was a rumor. I know that was something that they even talked to Kevin Feige about at one point. I didn't come out saying, "Damn, I really wanted to see Superior Cruise up in there." I think, and I guess I'm disagreeing with you here. I don't think it did anything for the MCU or the MCM now. I thought that it was a crazy more standalone thing than anything really consequential at the end. And maybe that's, I mean, that just seems to be phase. Are we even in phases anymore? Because like 1 through 3, it really did feel like by this point there was this arc, there was this this connectivity that was pulling everything together and driving you towards a certain thing. And we've had so much since. Let's see, the end of phase 3 was Far From Home. Think of all the content we've gotten since Far From Home and how just unconnected it feels. And while I do think that is a good thing at times, I thought that at least by this point we would have, like, this would be the kickoff to what's coming, you know, like, or at least there'd be like, I didn't like when Thor went off and did the whole rings thing in the middle of Age of Ultron. I thought that was a detractor, but at least by this point in phase 4, I was hoping to be like, there's got to be something bigger that they'll at least tease. And I didn't think we got any of that.
When we get into spoilers, I have a take on that I'm interested to hear your thoughts on. But I think this does a subtle thing of setting up something for the future.
Okay.
I think this movie sets up the next big bad. I think to your point of how like Marvel just kind of seems like they're just throwing stuff at the wall, just hoping for the best, and just like kind of like really like taking these characters and just saying, we're not gonna do narrative the way that we did in the first 3. We're gonna focus on fan service and kind of building up the platform Disney Plus. But also in the midst of that, I think that you're also starting to lay the groundwork for Kang the Conqueror.
If you or someone you know is listening to this podcast right now and you're struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, we encourage you guys to please reach out. This is the heartbeat of why we do what we do. Suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States, and as of this recording, there are 132 suicides that take place each and every day on American soil. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. That resource is going to be right in the description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this. There you'll find resources that include the National Suicide Lifeline, which is 1-800-273-8255. You can also text HELP to 741-741. We also have a plethora of other resources, including churches, getting connected with counselors, LGBT resources like the Trevor Project, and also veteran hotline as well. Please, if you hear nothing else in the show, understand that you listening to this right now, have value and worth. We get it. Suicide, depression, mental health, these are hard topics, and the stigma around them doesn't make it any easier. But please consider the resources right in the descriptions below, wherever you guys are listening, because once again, you have value and you have worth. So please stay with us.
I mean, Kang is coming. But I think the bigger on the business side of things, this is also we need to spread out, like we need to take a minute and work in all of the rights that we just got back, because now they have all those rights to those characters who were at Fox. I think And I think that's part of the reason we're getting so much multiversal stuff is so they can come up with, I think they have a reason that all of this has been separate. And I thought we were going to get some of those answers here, and we didn't, but I think they're still coming.
Well, I wonder if how much of this is for people like me who hears multiverse and goes, oh, I don't want it to be like, you know how like in the CW shows for DC, like they would like hop between different Earths and you would see like all the different superheroes on different Earths. Like, I don't know that I want that. I don't know if I want it that big, but like, it feels like they were kind of testing a lot of this stuff where they're like, what do you guys feel about this superhero? Or how do you feel about this concept? Does this work out? Could we build something around this? And like for someone like me that's kind of leery about the multiverse, I kind of appreciated that. But I understand your point when you said that, you know, it doesn't really expand too much when it absolutely could have.
I think Radarno over here in the chat says it's new and we've been through 2 years of crazy. I can see people getting overexcited about it. I think that probably leads to some of those, this is the best thing that Marvel has put. Well, Marvel hasn't, at least in theater form, if you haven't been watching all of the Disney Plus content, we haven't gotten a lot of Marvel. So I can see that absence making the heart grow fonder about the next big thing that comes out.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't the worst one by far. Just because it's not in the top 10, guess what? There's like there's almost 30 movies at this point. If you add in all of the other things that are on Disney Plus, we're past the 30 mark, I think. So, you know, just not being in the top 10 for me doesn't mean it's in the bottom 5 or anything like that. There's still, even Black Widow, which is a recent one, was, you know, levels below this in quality. Anything else I can say without going into spoilers would be that there were points where I was like, okay, this is definitely a Sam Raimi film. There were points that he did that brought me back to his Spider-Man days. I didn't even know Danny Elfman was the composer.
Me neither.
He was the composer, right?
Yes.
Yes.
There was a point in the soundtrack that I'm like, it kind of sounds like Batman. That's the thing Danny Elfman always does, is puts his Batman stuff in there. And then I see Danny Elfman in the credits. I'm like, okay, it was Danny Elfman. Because he always does. No matter how far away he tries to get from Batman, Batman always creeps back in to his composers.
Yeah. Well, I will be talking about Danny Elfman later because he did some things in here I want to talk about. So
okay.
All right, so before we jump into spoilers, this is the last spoiler-free thing I will say. Really loved Wanda in this movie, but if you're looking for a multiverse movie, everything, everywhere, all at once. Support indie cinema.
Okay.
I heard that was really good.
I've heard it's really good. That's a way different league, different genre, different tone and everything. A24 is in its own little category, which I love.
Yes,
I love them for, but yeah.
all right, anything else spoiler free before we get into this?
No.
Okay.
I want to talk spoilers so bad.
All right,
Yeah.
so since this is our crossover with Victims and Villains, we have to all go through and rate it on a scale of 1 to 5. Devin, you get to go first because you're the only one who didn't know this was coming.
Is 5 best or 5 worst?
5 is
5
best.
is best.
I'm gonna give it a 3.5. It's gonna be 4 if we have to do whole numbers, but I'll give it 3.5 as my official rating.
Okay.
I agree. I gave it 7 out of 10 for some reason, which boils down to 3.5 out of 5. I think that's where I'm at. Yeah.
Cap, what about you?
I'm gonna go with 3 out of 5.
Ooh, a notch down. All right.
I'm going to go 4 out of 5.
Of course.
And I have the reasons for that are not what I thought they would be. And I'll get into that in spoilers. So, at this point, if you have not seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, we are going to be spoiling the hell out of it. So, this is your warning. Yeah. Spoiler alert is up. So, who wants to go first?
I do.
Okay, go for it. It's all you.
Sorry, I've got to kick this off. I got to return back to the finale of WandaVision. I was bullshit. I hate this. I hate everybody online. I hate anybody that was like, good for her. She turned herself around. She's great. That's a superhero send-off. I hated Maria Rambeau being like, you don't know what she sacrificed. You should all feel bad for the woman that just choked you out in Times Square and tortured you for the last month. I hated that ending. I was like, bullshit. Why can't you just commit? She tortured a town for a month. Just let her be a villain. Just let her be a villain. And somebody for this film was like, you know what? We're not only going to make her a villain, we're going to make her like a crazy villain. She is going to have the highest body count that you've seen in the MCU in a long time, when you're not talking about Thanos and half the universe. But and not only is the body count high, we see it. And she is vicious. And I loved it. I loved it so much. I love that she's the villain because all this marketing suggested that she wasn't. And I really didn't want to see that. I didn't. Even the trailer was like, Doctor Strange, I'm not here to talk about that. Why the hell not? She tortured a town. And I hated that. I did not want to see her going up against, and I even theorized that she was going to be going up against an alternate version of her that was the villain. I'm like, no, she is the villain. And they made her the villain, and I still have some issues with that, and I have some issues with how some people are interpreting that, but I liked that she was the villain because, like, she earned it. She earned being a villain, and she was a good villain, in my opinion.
So since we're talking about Wanda right off the gate, I want to ask you guys a question. Does Wanda being the villain in this make any sense if you did not see WandaVision?
I will say no. I think WandaVision was like required viewing for this because it just kind of looks like you're like, okay, well, where does she get the what's it called, the deadbolt or
Darkhold.
the Darkhold? Like where's the Darkhold come from? Like where's the new threads come from? Who are these kids? Like there's so much that's integrated, and like it's interesting to kind of see this because like Feige's also said in press interviews that the ending of Loki has directly caused both No Way Home and Multiverse of Madness.
Oh wow.
Because but when they were starting to come out, he basically went on record saying that, oh, you don't need to watch the Disney Plus shows, like they're kind of like enhancers for the MCU. But no, now we're starting to actually see that like the events of those series are starting to affect the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah, he straight up lied in that press thing.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
If he was just talking about like Winter Soldier or Moon Knight, I could see that. But they launched with Wanda, and I know they launched with Wanda due to COVID. That wasn't the original plan.
Yeah.
But by the time he was on camera saying, these are just, if you just wanted to stick to the theatricals, you could do that. These are more like additional stuff that'll give more depth to the character, which I appreciated. I thought that was fine. But this film does not make sense if you have not seen WandaVision. And to their credit, I don't think they ever said that it would. I think a lot of people were like, we're pushing, go watch WandaVision. Because, this is almost more of a WandaVision sequel than a Doctor Strange sequel, to be honest.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, I think this is one of the first times we've had an MCU villain where we actually watch almost their entire growth, like or become a villain. Did that make her connect more as the villain to you guys? Like, did she pack more of an emotional punch? Because she definitely did for me.
Yes.
Like, I felt for her the whole time.
Alan, go ahead.
I mean, I felt for her. There was one point in the film I thought to myself, oh, wow, she was an Avenger. Like, and now she's just like straight up murdering people left and right.
This is I keep hearing this, and it gets under my skin and it relates to what you're just asking right now.
Yeah.
I keep hearing this thing that nothing in this movie is her fault, that she has been corrupted by the Darkhold, and that it's the Darkhold doing this. And there's even a 5-second sequence that kind of hints to that. But I'm glad that was it, because we have seen the growth of this character, and she's been a crazy bitch since the beginning. I mean, she's had her reasons, but
Yeah.
I mean, everything about her life she has handled poorly, and it has made her more vicious and more vindictive and more on edge. And I totally get that. But I mean, we were introduced to her trying to fuck up the Avengers no matter who died, no matter how many civilians were in the middle of that. She was very quick to join sides when it was let's fight with each other, especially with Tony being on the opposite side. She has always been violent, and then, you know, everything that happened in WandaVision was before she got the Darkhold. She was torturing people before she got that book. Yeah. She was choking them out in Times Square before she got that book. Yep. So all these things that she's done that have been violent and that have been extreme, I think Steve Rogers and the good people of the Avengers just kind of toned her down and tried to reel her in a bit. If anything, the Darkhold kind of just enabled her to be more of the destructive, chaotic self she is. But I hate this theory that she was possessed, you know, and that this wasn't her. Did you guys think that, or do you lean more towards my side?
I can see how it's being read that way. I think, if anything, you're right with the Darkhold's kind of pushing her more, like just pushing her a little bit because she's already there, and it's just like enhancing what's there, because she did like the whole Westview thing, like that's all on her. And I think the chaos magic, because that's what they call it in WandaVision, her chaos magic is just that. It's chaos. And I think the Darkhold embraces the chaos. And that's chaos theory.
I think it's interesting, like the just where the Avengers kind of come into play with after the events of Age of Ultron. It's kind of almost like the idea of, like, so in evangelical circles we have a concept called missionary dating, where it's essentially one Christian dates a non-Christian in order to kind of convert them, and that's what it kind of it doesn't work, I will say that.
But like the opposite, I'm just gonna say. I mean,
that's what it kind of felt like her like journey throughout the entire like Avengers saga, and once she kind of like Vision kind of seemed to like ground her, and once you kind of pull that out, you kind of start to get the Westview. You start to get the you know, the search for America Chavez and the multiverse and to be reunited with their kids, and you get this viciousness that I think really kind of goes back to what Chris Nolan said. You know, you either live long enough to see yourself become you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain.
There it is.
And I think that this movie embodies that so much with her journey. Like, it definitely feels earned. It's like we've been on this journey since 2015.
Well, and I think that answers one of the most, I think, uncharitable reads I think I've ever heard of this movie. Is I read an article just before this that said that her whole plot was incredibly, like, they said it was misogynist because, like, they're just having the bad guy be a crazy mommy, and then it's just this like stereotype. And I think that's such a really strange and kind of forced reading on what's actually happening with her character.
I think
I've heard a lot of those. Yeah, I've heard a lot of those.
Like, oh, have you?
And I don't
agree.
Yeah, I don't agree with it either, but I also think part of it's coming from people who haven't been watching WandaVision or haven't been following the character from 2015.
Or maybe it went from WandaVision to this and not all the other content.
Yeah,
you know, she's done a lot of growing, and it's not just those two properties. And I've heard that a lot. I've heard other edgy takes on, like, you know, of that, or they jumped the gun with her, or it makes no sense that she went this way. And I agree with Josh. I think this was earned because she was this way when we first met her. Like, Ultron wasn't Ultron wasn't, controlling her or anything. She planted the seed in Tony Stark's head for Ultron. She set things in motion, and she put people's lives in danger in order for revenge. And Vision and graceful people like Captain America took pity on her and tried to give her stability, and that worked for a while. But then she lost even more, and she's just had a life of loss. And because of her abilities, and then because of, the dark nature of it, and now that she's the Scarlet Witch, it's just easier. It's easier for her to go down this path. So I don't agree with the takes that it's lazy writing, or that it came from left field, or that it's misogynistic. I think it is in line, and that's why I wanted to go this way so much, because I saw the building blocks. And yeah, I was just surprised that they took it that way.
Let me ask you guys a question, because Marvel seems to be famous for the fact that they have like terrible villains. Like they've built this brand really well. They haven't been able to like effectively crack the code for a noteworthy antagonist, with the exception of Thanos and Loki and Killmonger. Do you guys feel like we got like an adequate antagonist for this movie?
I'd say yes.
Yeah. I disagree with that statement. I think Marvel is more known for having great villains that they kill off in the first movie that they're there. Yeah. I think Killmonger.
All right, fair enough.
Ultron,
Ironmonger.
Ironmonger, Loki's been brought back. I don't care. I would love to see Ironmonger back. If you look back over the more memorable villains, I mean, even Red Skull was awesome, and I wanted more. I think they kind of did it here, though I'm not buying it. I don't believe she's gone. Although I have a theory on why they would do that, but. Yeah, I think she ranks among the great villains, especially with this backstory, especially because it didn't just happen at the beginning of the film. We had all this to build up to it. The only thing that I wish we had more of, and I don't think it's, I'm sure you've heard about the 3-hour cut and then the 2-hour, 40-minute cut of this, that was cut down to this, 2-hour and 10-minute film. This is a very short film, at least compared to some of the other Marvel films we've gotten. I don't think it's in those cuts, and we'll talk about the Illuminati in general, but in her big fight scenes, I thought they were over and done with way too quick because Sam Raimi is great at a lot of things, but he's not that great at action. And, I mean, in those moments, I miss the Russo brothers so much because they have iconic action scenes. They know how to do action on the big and small scale. And I think there were 2 big scenes in this film that could have been so much better. And I was hyped from the moment they were building it up, and then they were done. And I'm like, you left me wanting a bit there.
Which 2 scenes?
But
I think I can guess which one.
The Comatage scene and the Illuminati scene. I think they were just like, bam, bam, done.
Would that necessarily be the result of poor direction from Raimi, or the fact that you have such a powerful antagonist in Wanda?
I think both, because I think both. I think it's one thing to be like, she's super powerful, but come on, man, Comatage, it was over and done with in seconds. I think they could have. There's ways to make a scene where you could still show the other person to be crazy overpowered, and yet still build it a little more, instead of it, and the way it was done, it was just like little bolts of red and it was done. And then Illuminati, it had these heroes that you were building up, and then they were just off screen in seconds, and I was I wanted a little bit more of that.
Just touching on Comatage for a second, like, most of that was just the setup for the battle, and then the battle was over.
Like, so much setup, so much hype.
but I'm glad you like. Part of the reason I like this film so much is it felt like a Sam Raimi film. Like a few weeks ago, I got to see,
really did, yeah.
I got to see Army of Darkness for the first time with Josh at the Alamo, and like this felt like Evil Dead 4, and both in like the just in tone and the feel of it, like it just felt like another Evil Dead movie with a Marvel hero instead of Ash Williams, and I was like, I'm here for this. Like I with that mindset, like I think I was hoping for more Sam Raimi's like Spider-Man type feel, which you do get a lot of in the first 10 minutes of this with the wedding stuff. Like
when he jumps off that balcony from the wedding, I was like,
Yeah.
that is Sam Raimi's Spider-Man all over the screen right there.
But it felt so much like the Evil Dead films that I was like, I just want more Evil Dead now. So my wife and I are now watching Ash versus the Evil Dead. So
Good.
Nice. There's a meme that I came across today that's it's a Trojan horse and it says Evil Dead 4, and it's like they're trying to like enter into like Disney, and it's like, oh, this is Doctor Strange, which I mean, it's not wrong.
It's a good meme.
Devin, have you seen the Evil Dead films?
I have, yeah.
Okay.
I love them.
All right.
There
Evil
was
Dead
so
Rise.
much the camera work and the screams and coming. I mean, they got right up in your face. You know, there was so many like Ash in the cabin, you know, references to this, and I was like, oh yeah, this is, you know, if it wasn't Sam Raimi, it's a love letter to Sam Raimi because it's just so much his style. You know?
It's a love
and
letter.
I think it worked for the most part. You know,
It's a love letter to Sam Raimi and a punch to the face to Bruce Campbell, literally, like multiple times.
I loved seeing that so much. I'm just gonna say that.
Same.
I loved it.
I mean, I knew his
fact-
knew his cameo was coming.
Did you?
yeah.
I mean, he was teasing it for
It's Sam Raimi.
the last 2 years on Twitter.
Oh yeah, he even came out like, "Hey guys, I'm filming a scene today for my good pal." They've got to be good friends. I mean, to be able to say, "Hey, I want you in my new film. You're just gonna be there for 5 seconds, and you're just gonna punch yourself in the face," and for Bruce to be like, "Yeah, that's worth my time because you're doing it." That's awesome. That's a bromance if I've ever seen one.
I think I saw some press where Bruce Campbell's like, I think my scene might have got cut. Like, I don't even know if I'm in the movie, but I filmed something. So
yeah.
And he's also the post-credit scene, which
Yep.
right up there with Homecoming's post-credit scene.
So were you upset by that?
No, dude, I loved it. I love like the post-credit scenes like that. Like the Captain America Homecoming scene is probably one of my favorites in the entire MCU, and Ash Williams or Bruce Campbell kind of like realizing the fact that like the spell has been broken was just absolutely hilarious.
I had somebody.
I would appreciate it if they did like something official where they were like, all right, look, from now on, the mid-credit scene is going to be the bigger thing that teases what's next. The in-credit scene, if you want to stick around, is going to be a fun little bit. Because you know, it used to be like, you stayed around to the end credits, you got a trailer for the Avengers. You know, you got big monumental shit for rewarding for you to sit through 20 minutes of credit, and the credits just get longer with each one of these films. So I wish they'd come out and say like, all right, you know, we love you. If you want to stay that long, the end one's gonna be more funny gag stuff. The middle one's gonna be like, you know, the thing you're waiting for if you're waiting for something that teases the next thing.
Sure.
I had somebody in my theater very upset that was the last scene. He's like, we waited around for
Same.
that. And I was like,
Same.
And I feel for him because I think that's half the fandom is wanting. Is half the fandom is like Josh and I think it's funny too. I loved the PE teacher the Captain America video is like expectations or whatever his little speech was.
So
was
you've
hilarious.
waited around.
That was great, but I do feel like some people are like, come on, show us the next big thing. Where are we going? You know, and then that's all they get. So that's why I would love that, because then I feel like that's probably 50-50 of the audience is, you know, one wants more light stuff, one wants the more heavy stuff.
That's why I always Google stuff, like while the trailers start. I'm just like, all right, how many post-credit scenes are there? And like most articles will tell you nowadays that it's like, hey, like the first one's the one that you need to pay attention to, or like the first one's a comical, and then it's the second one that you need to pay attention to. But I mean, for the most part, like, I just think people just don't think about that, so they're just kind of like, it's Marvel. There's bound to be something, whether it's post-credit or post-credit.
See, I messaged you guys to make sure that there were two, so I didn't just waste my time. So, all right, I've got three big topics we need to talk about. Okay. In the show, we got Illuminati, we've got America Chavez and the multiverse, and where Marvel goes in the future with all of this stuff. So, do we want to start with the Illuminati?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Sure.
So we kind of knew, like, trailers and commercials for this movie started teasing the Illuminati by actually saying the name. I think anyone who's on the internet kind of assumed that's where they were going with this, but then you had Mordo actually saying, "The Illuminati will see you now," in a TV spot, which I tried to avoid, but still couldn't.
Well, and you literally had Patrick Stewart's voice in the first trailer. So
Yeah.
I have seen no TV spots. I've only seen the two official trailers, and you could hear him in that. So, I think that
Absolutely.
was a tease from the very beginning that the blurry figures were going to be somebody big.
Yeah. Well, I expected big, but what were there any surprises for you guys in the Illuminati? Because for me, the biggest surprise was Black Bolt from the Inhumans.
Clearly.
Oh.
Clearly the biggest surprise. Or at least
please,
the least
take
likely.
the words from my mouth.
The least likely.
The
Like,
least likely surprise.
I wish I had put money on that in Vegas because, and this was right. Like, Anson Mount was good on that show.
Yeah.
Like, this show was what it was, but there's nothing wrong.
Show
Like,
was shit.
as an actor, he's great. I just watched him on Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, where he plays Christopher Pike.
Yeah, he's having a great week right now.
And I
He's
was
coming
like-
out with two big things.
I freaked out more for that than I did for anyone else in the Illuminati.
So hold on, he's actually
yeah.
from the Inhumans, because I
Yes.
didn't know that. He
Yeah,
was just random superhero for me.
Yeah,
He was this character in Inhumans. He was the
minus the
he wasn't a
tuning
huge
fork.
part. Yeah, they changed his outfit a bit, but
Mm-hmm.
he was this person in Inhumans, and because
Wow.
he can't talk without killing or whatever, it's terrible for him to talk, then he didn't have a huge part of that show. Or at least, a lot of screen time, but yeah, he was one of the major players in that show.
I would argue that the opposite. I think he had too much screen time for not being able to talk.
And I'd agree with that. That
Yeah.
show was terrible. Didn't they even do like a theatrical release?
They
Of the
did
first-
In IMAX,
first two
baby.
episodes.
first two episodes in IMAX.
They tried.
Yep.
They tried so hard to sell that turd. I think they knew it too. They're like, we got to do something.
We don't
And they
have the
put it
rights
on
to the
big
X-Men.
screen.
We got to do the Inhumans. Inhumans fails.
was
Okay,
such-
let's go buy Fox. Like, that's what happened.
Yeah, because it was supposed to be a movie at one point. It was
Yeah.
going to be a
Yep.
movie. Then they're like, we'll reduce it to a TV show. Although they didn't say reduce, they said we're going to flesh it out. It's got to be more than a movie because we're giving it a TV show. And then everybody was like, this is worse than Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and we know why you did this because you wanted to distance yourself. So the fact that he was there, I was like, oh, gosh. Like, I know it's not the same one, but it was still kind of it was neat. It was a neat nod to a shitty show, and
Yeah.
I appreciated it. I did not expect that.
How would you guys like to help us get mental health resources into schools, conventions, and other events? Well, now you can. Simply go to patreon.com/victims and villains for as little as $1 a month. You guys can help us get mental health resources into current and upcoming generations, educate and break down stigma surrounding mental health, suicide, and depression. And you get exclusive content that you can't get anywhere else. And you guys can tell us which Nicolas Cage movie you want us to cover, and we'll do it. All it takes to get started is to go to patreon.com/victims and villains, or simply click the link in the episode description wherever you guys are currently listening or streaming this episode. Pick your tier and get started today. Yes, it's that simple. So quickly select the tier that you want and help us get hope into the hands of the depressed and the suicidal today.
Yeah,
Josh.
I never watched Inhumans, so like this was my introduction to that character. And just being able, like, the fact alone that you got to see his power set on Titan, I thought was awesome. And it makes me really hopeful that we get an Inhumans movie or property. But I think now that they have X-Men, this is just kind of like a glorified cameo.
I think he uses his power more in this movie than he does on the show. So,
wow.
How about you guys? What were there any surprises for you guys in the Illuminati? Anything you were happy to see? Or not happy to see?
Krasinski.
Yeah.
Krasinski. Just gonna say that. Like, as someone that is a huge Office fan, like I always love seeing what he does post Office. I love the Quiet Place movies, and I think that, like, dude, my theater erupted when
Me
he
too.
came on the screen, and like
When he got the
everyone just
superhero
like
entrance too. Like they
yes,
they wanted you to
Like-
erupt. They teed that up. Yeah.
and like I just have to say, between like him and like Danny Elfman's like score to Patrick Stewart with the 90s theme song, like those were like two of the best parts of like the Illuminati sequence.
So real quick, just an interesting tidbit I noticed during the credits. The X-Men theme, they credit not as X-Men 92
Yes,
theme,
they do.
X-Men 97, which is going to be
Yeah,
the
of
Marvel Disney
That's
Plus
the,
show.
That's an immediate thing that I thought about. I was
Yeah.
like, they've
wow.
got it. They've got that animated show coming out. Why
Yeah.
not use it? So
Yeah.
I immediately thought of that. John Krasinski as Reed Richards. It was a perfect play for them because it can go one of two routes. One, if people are like, yes, he killed it, which I'm not gonna lie, I have seen people that said he did not.
wow.
I have seen people that are like, yeah, now we know why it's a fan casting. But I heard a lot of people are like, if this is his audition, he nailed it. But I could see this being an audition. Like if it's taken well, we'll go by Doctor Strange standards, which means another universe's Fantastic Four would look like John Krasinski. If it doesn't go well, we'll go by No Way Home standards, and that if we when and if we do Fantastic Four, it will be somebody else. So they're kind of setting themselves up to go one of two directions.
Yeah.
I certainly
Yeah.
I would love for him and Emily Blunt to be Mr. and Mrs. Richards. I think that would be fantastic, and I think they should just pull the trigger. But for the little bit that we got, I think he did a great job. He didn't have a lot of screen time. I think he did a great job. I was surprised. Based on the trailers, I had theorized that Monica Rambeau was in this movie. There were spots that were on purposely quick and purposely blurred to where you couldn't tell who that was flying, but that kind of looked like Captain Marvel's powers. And is that Monica Rambeau? Is this continuing on what we got in WandaVision? And I was like, gosh, I really hope not, because I just fucking hated her in WandaVision, and I know we're gonna get more of her. I need some time. I need some time to heal from that just terrible character. So to see that it was Maria Rambeau was great. I thought that she was awesome. Real quick though, is that the same actress from Captain Marvel?
Yeah.
Okay, It is. Because I had forgot about that. I really didn't care for that movie. I don't hate it as much as other people, but I just forgotten most of that. I didn't think of her. I thought of her role in 007. And I'm like, I fucking love this chick. She is awesome. She's a badass. And to see her there, I was like, yes. That felt like, I'm no offense, but Monica Rambeau felt like TV quality. Maria Rambeau felt like movie quality, and she, while her fight was short, I was like, yeah, bring it on. I thought I liked seeing her up there.
Devin, how about you?
Well, no, I mean, I think the Illuminati scene was a bit of what I was talking about earlier when it expands the MCU to the point where, okay, yeah, X-Men are here, Fantastic Four are here. Hey, did you watch What If? Here's a nod to What If. Here's a nod to Inhumans. It expands the MCU to be that broad, but then it's a bit like what you had said, Josh, where it feels like an audition. How did fans react to these people being there? Did they love it? Okay, that's the new property that gets a show. Did they hate it? Don't worry, you only saw it once. Mm-hmm. And that's where it feels like at one time it's taking this huge swing, but also not doing it at all.
Although Captain Carter was a second take from What If. I liked seeing her up there. I really liked her episode of What If, even though it was one of the more safe episodes of What If, just kind of redoing scenes, but with Captain Carter instead of Steve Rogers. But I did like seeing her up there. I thought her death was, I mean, they just took the scene from the zombie episode of What If and made it Captain Carter. But this is what I'm talking about. I think when they set up, I'm like, this is great. And then when Wanda comes in and they're like, we're going to go handle this. Like, I haven't read a lot of the Illuminati stuff. I know I think that was Bendis that brought them in, and it was kind of a short run. I don't know. I think they were just supposed to be a secret governing body and not necessarily the most powerful of everybody. So I get how that would be the excuse, is that, hey, these aren't necessarily the heavy hitters. But at the same time, I expected them to have a little bit more of a fight. It really did feel like they just didn't have somebody behind the chair that could showcase a good enough fight. So it was just these little snippets and dead, moving on, you know, and I know that wasn't the point of the movie, but I just wanted a little bit more, you know.
Man, if I had a nickel for every time I've seen Patrick Stewart die on screen as Charles Xavier.
Yeah. Although I'll take this over Picard season 2, because that shit show
is it not good?
It's pissing me off so much. It's so bad.
It started off good. I think it stumbles a bit on the ending, but yeah, it
stumbles a bit from episode 2, man. Once it turns into, we're gonna be in modern times so that we don't have to show Star Trek stuff. I mean, there's so much wrong with it. I mean, once they started, they literally, I won't get into spoilers, they literally started advertising season 3 in the middle of season 2. They would have commercials for season 3's coming, almost because they thought people didn't care enough about season 2. That's not a good sign.
To be fair, they made that big announcement for season 3 on First Contact Day when they announced the whole cast is coming back. So
didn't help season 2 though.
It didn't
help season 2.
I recommend finish it, because there's that one scene in the finale I think you'll enjoy.
I'm still gonna finish it.
Yeah.
I'm just not happy with it. But I'm happy with him in this. I thought he had just enough, and I liked that he was the one person with hope up there. Like, he was like, if you escape, meaning I hope you escape. If you escape, you know, find the door that Stephen left or something like that. I like that was his tone versus what's his face, who was just like, I'm gonna kill you because you need to die, you know.
So I saw this in ScreenX. So I had the projections on the wall as well as the ScreenX. I
need to find one of those theaters.
The best scene in the whole film that used that the best was Xavier's scene where he goes up to the rubble and tries to pull Wanda out, because you're just you feel like you're in this white void with them, and then it starts filling in with the red on the sides, and it's like, this is awesome. Like, that was the coolest part of the whole movie for ScreenX. So.
And that was the scene I was talking about, that it kind of hinted that Wanda wasn't in control.
Yeah.
I'm glad that's all we got, because you could interpret that as that. You can interpret that as Wanda setting a trap, and playing on his want for everybody to have a good side. I'm just glad they didn't take it past that, because it clearly felt like that's what that was saying, is that the Wanda we know and love is buried and the Darkhold is taken over her. But the fact that they never really said that afterwards, there was no line from Doctor Strange that was just like, she's all Darkhold now, this is no longer Wanda. I appreciated that because that's what everybody online is saying, and I'm like, just this, that ruins the movie for me. Yeah. Making an excuse for her actions in this film ruins the film for me.
I mean, at the same time, though, you have people who are like, yeah, Thanos was right. Like, we should just split everyone. Like,
fair.
The internet's going to internet. Is I guess what I'm trying to say.
you had the Hawkeye drinking from a Thanos was right mug in his show.
Yeah.
He had that on the show.
Yeah. All right. So one thing we didn't talk about at all yet is America Chavez. What did you guys think of America as a character?
I think there's a reason we haven't talked about her because
yeah,
I wanted to like her, but she was the most useless part of this show. I thought her power set was cool. I know she's had different power sets in the comics, and I thought just the star thing, portal thing, whenever it happened, I was like, okay, I know there's some questionable CGI in this show, but whenever they did that, I was like, that does look cool. But yeah, everything else about her, they either cut it on that hour and a half that they cut out of this film, or they had other plans, because we talked about it. They had other, there was that plans that she might have been in No Way Home, and maybe that would have given her a little more foundation from this film, but it just didn't feel like the film cared about having her in this film.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
It still felt like not enough.
Yeah, I want to say that like she feels like a Disney Plus character, the way that like Kate Bishop feels. Like I wouldn't necessarily want to see Kate Bishop as a secondary character introduced into a tentpole property like a Doctor Strange sequel. I would want her to be explored in a Hawkeye series. I think that's when that's kind of what America Chavez feels like to me.
Right.
Like she should have 100% been a Disney Plus series.
I think you're right. I do. On one hand, I do really like the fact that, like, I do kind of like the fact that they didn't make her like this like plucky little girl character. Like my kind of like worst version of that is if you guys ever saw Bad Batch. I really kept Omega's like a hard sell for me. And they didn't make her like Avengers Omega. They were pretty judicious with her, which I thought was fine. But she kind of just felt like she was like plot device, I think. Like she's the reason they could hop multiverses.
100%.
Yeah. And I feel like unless they change something about her, that's going to be her going forward. She's just going to be like I'm trying to talk over
I muted him.
Okay. I feel like she's gonna be, like I mean, yeah, she's training at Comitage afterwards or whatever. But there was no part unless she has another power set. I can just see her being in future properties the one that says, "Oh, we got to get out of here. Open a portal," and then it's just a string of cool stuff that they throw in, and then we get back to the plot, which is kind of what they did in this movie,
Yeah.
Well, also too, like Devin, you talked earlier about like how you're not ready for Marvel to kind of like embrace the multiverse, and I think with a character like her, you have no choice now but to embrace it.
Well, here was the part that I don't like about, or the part that gets me like my hackles raised or whatever, is when they're like, okay, so we're Earth 616, but then there's also like Earth 528, and Earth 528 is like the same, but like instead of Iron Man, it's like Gold Man. And then there's like Earth 257 where, now it's all sandwiches. And like, I don't know that I want multiple movies like that. I just know that, I specifically like, if this is an okay introduction. If there's one character that does it, you tie it to this. I liked her backstory. I like what they did with her, saying like, she accidentally opened the portal, her parents got sucked in. I thought that was a cool way to introduce her and to make me care about her journeys through the multiverse. But I don't know, it felt like enough for me that it wasn't too in my face. But I also, you're right, I had to embrace a bit of it.
But I think they could have done a little bit more work into her backstory, because I have not read her comics. All I know is that, one, she comes from a world that doesn't have America, and so I guess her being named America, she's not named after America. It still sounded weird every time Doctor Strange was like, America's having a rough time, and I was like, yeah, no shit. Are you talking about like is this a movie anymore or what? But there was that aspect, and then I don't want to be that person, but there was the aspect of her parents, and this was something like, you know, Disney's standing ground. They're not going to take out this scene for whatever, Saudi Arabia or whoever wanted it out of the scene. And every time we get one of these articles before a movie comes out, it's just self-advertising. It's this thing that Disney does to say, we're bringing the first gay character to this. We're bringing a gay character to that. And then when it comes to it, it's off to the side of the screen or it's barely mentioned. And here it was, she had two moms and then she had a gay pride pin on her thing, which the story kind of suggests that was a normal thing on her Earth. So why would there be a gay pride pin? But either way, it was just so like, I don't know. It felt like Disney continues to like say we're going to do something, and then it's so minuscule that it felt more like self-promotion than actual representation. And granted, I'm not part of that community, so I can completely understand if somebody came up and said, hey, anything is better than nothing. But it did feel like they were hyping themselves up, and then what we actually saw, I just feel like that's just one aspect of her character, but we didn't get any real meat to her character. It just felt like she was just someone on the screen when it was convenient to have her on the screen, and that was it.
I don't know if you got, sorry about having the duck out, but my landlord was calling, so I had to take that call. I don't know if you guys touched on this at all, but I really think she's just another wave of, hey, this character is going to be in the Young Avengers, so buckle up. And I feel like that's we keep getting with everything.
Oh,
Josh had mentioned Kate Bishop, so that makes sense.
100%. I am curious to see, like, because we've gotten multiple Young Avengers like introduced over like different platforms, like what platform is it going to be? Right. Because I don't feel like it's cinematic enough to be a big screen. Mm-hmm. Like, I think it's kind of something that you go off and you do like a 6-episode Disney Plus series.
I don't know. I can see them doing something where the older Avengers who are still there, like something happens to them and then the Young Avengers have to come in and save the day. Like, I could see that happening on the big screen. I don't know if I want to see that happening on the big screen. But I feel like in the future we'll probably see, like, a lot of them have been on Disney Plus shows. So I wouldn't be surprised if there is a Disney Plus series where you have these young kids at camp training to become Avengers. And like I say, young kids, like she's 14, I think. And then you have Kate Bishop who's in her 20s. So it's not like they're all super young, but
I wanted more of her. And I guess that's a testament, because I didn't think she was annoying. I did like her. I thought she was I thought she was a capable actress. I thought she did well. And I did look her up when I got home, because I know there were some comics about her. But according to the comics, her powers are superhuman speed, superhuman strength, durability, flight, bioluminescence, bulletproof skin, teleportation, and interdimensional travel. So they clearly just focused on one power set here, but they could have at least teased other things or shown us some combos or something, just leaving her at Comitage at the end. It felt like if they never talked about her again, it would make sense for the MCU. Like, she's just so this one thing that if the plot doesn't need her, we'll never touch on her again. Where if they gave her a little more power set or a little more depth to her character, it would feel more like, okay, we're going to see more of her.
I'm going to save my complaining about Marvel changing power sets for when we talk about Ms. Marvel next month.
Hey, Kevin Feige talked about it. You can't say anything anymore.
Oh, did he?
What?
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know. He like released this whole like article about why they changed her power set and why it makes more sense now than the original. That was my response. I just went, eh.
Yeah.
I know you got to change things for the shows. I know you do, but it was just like, apparently, according to Marvel, she just has this laundry list, and they took one thing that is really only vital if the plot of your movie has to do with that one thing. They could have given her at least one other thing, you know,
Well,
and a little more attention on the screen.
I think they do tease that, though, when she punches the glass and it leaves the star form. Like, I think they are teasing her other powers a little bit. They just don't do a great job at it, necessarily.
At least it looked good. Like, they could have given her sloppy CGI, but it looked good. Like, I really, especially we saw it in Dolby Atmos, and when it happened, I was like, oh, that is cool. That's a cool effect. It's a neat effect. I don't get it. I'll have to read more about her for why she's America, and I just couldn't help but crack up every time. America's in trouble.
So
yeah, I agree.
While we're talking about America, do you think the multiverse was used well in this? Would you have liked to see more universes? Do you think they did just enough? Did you want to see more? Because I'm on the fence, honestly. Like, I think the segment we saw where they're going through all the different worlds was cool. And I would have liked to explore maybe one or two more Earths before we settle on the Illuminati Earth. But at the same time, like, I'm fine that they didn't.
I thought that was neat, but it felt so fast that the exact same scene in the trailer for Into the Spider-Verse Volume 1 seemed longer in the trailer than this scene did in the movie. Like, there's literally a whole scene of Spider-Man falling through multiple universes with another Spider-Man chasing after him. That scene in a trailer for a movie felt longer than this scene in a movie. And I was like, this is cool, but it's way too much and way too fast. And I'm not saying we needed a full scene in each of these universes, but it just kind of felt like eye candy and then let's move on. And I mean, multiverse is in the trailer, and the most we got were a couple different versions of him, pizza balls, and some a more reason to have Rachel McAdams on screen. And I like Rachel McAdams. I don't really like, I don't know, her alter version and the other thing. I thought that wasn't used enough, or they held on to her too long. Like, there was a point in the movie where she's just standing outside the castle in the gray zone, like waiting for something to happen, and I'm like, why are you even here? Like, couldn't they have done something more than just have her stand outside and wait? You know, it just felt odd.
I don't think Sam Raimi knows what to do with redhead love interests.
Maybe that's it. Yeah.
I want to say though, like I agreed with Josh. Like that particular sequence where we do explore multiple universes, it goes by so quick that I couldn't tell you anything about that sequence except that they were paint in a single universe.
Because that was the most visual one. I remember that one too, and it was cool.
And like, but again, like, my major complaint about this movie is that, like, it just, aside from like other things, like the fact that multiverse is literally in the title, we explore 3 universes at best, and
we mainly stick to one. We
mainly stick to one. And I think I'm the only person on this call that has seen it, but Everything Everywhere All at Once, like, doesn't promote itself as a multiverse movie, but it is the definitive multiverse movie. If you're gonna, like, how you're going to do it, you need to see that movie and, like, then make your superhero movie
now.
afterwards.
I find it weird that you're saying that it doesn't promote itself as a multiverse movie, but
like the
every
main part of the
every
trailer.
promotion I've seen is like, this is the best multiverse movie ever. Like,
Look, I am saying that statement.
Seen for it.
I am saying that statement because it doesn't have multiverse in the name.
And it even has a third eye. At least from the trailer, she's got a third eye in that movie. So it's
a googly eye.
That.
It's a googly eye.
Can we talk about the third eye thing? Because that felt. I mean, there's a couple questionable CGI things in this film, but that felt like
yes,
yeah.
Well, I'm sorry.
Do you guys know what that means? Is he like evil now? Why does he have the third eye in the end? I don't know because I don't know much about Stephen Strange.
That's what I would like to know. I don't know enough about the comics, but like, did the Darkhold like affect him to that way? Because like the person that like him and her are like companions that basically just travel the multiverse now.
Oh, wow.
So like similarly to Thor going off with the Guardians at the end of Endgame, now you have Doctor Strange kind of like no longer earthbound, but now he's kind of like going through the multiverse, which I kind of like because like it gives him purpose again, because he's no longer the Sorcerer Supreme. So you kind of need something to need him to be able to do something that's still pulling from the comics.
I mean, I didn't read that as him going off and like ditching Earth completely. I read it as there's an incursion. She's from the dark dimension. That he has to go help fix it, and they're setting up whatever is next.
If that was the point, they could have built that up a bit. They could have had him coming back to us, to R616, seeing Rachel McAdams happy, seeing Wong taking care of Comatage just fine. Although you would think he would be there, like rebuilding it because of all the destruction that happened. But instead, he's just like, raindrops keep falling on my head walking down the street in New York City. But if that was the point where he doesn't feel like he belongs here anymore, they could have. I didn't get that feeling at all. They could have beefed that up a little bit if that was the play.
I'm not saying that like that's how I read it. Like that's what their relationship is in the comics.
Okay.
Well, yeah. She's his main love interest outside of Christine.
Oh, she is?
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
They actually end up getting married, I think, in the comic books.
I hope she gets a better costume.
Interesting.
She looks just silly in this. and maybe that's just her thing, because she had white dreads in the Fast series, so maybe that's just her thing. When she enters a franchise, she has to look silly the first time. But going back to your question of the third eye thing, yeah, that was kind of up in the. I think they kind of said that like maybe that was part of the Darkhold, but if you really to know that they're really bad and beyond repair is when their fingers go black, and his fingers had not gone black yet. That kind of seemed like what they were saying, because Wanda's fingers were black, and the one that
Sinister Strange,
whoever they had to kill on Titan, his fingers were black, and his hair was messed. He just looked all kinds of a mess. But I guess the third eye was like a consequence, but not like the last straw. I think the dark fingers were the last straw. Once you go gothic, you can't go back.
Truth. I also am gonna be like definitely peeved if like the next time we see Doctor Strange, we don't get like a third eye blind intro.
Yes,
man. Semi-charmed life.
You just want to check in on him living that semi-charmed life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Anything? Did you have a third main topic that we hadn't talked about yet?
I mean, I think we're getting there with like what they're setting up with this. What do you guys think they're going to do next with the multiverse in the MCU?
Look, can I air something out real quick? Sure, in the comics are the 616. Mm-hmm. And the fact that you've now dubbed the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse 616, that to me seems problematic, because you are saying that the comics and the cinematic universe are one and the same, and there needs to be some kind of variation where it's this is the Marvel
Or maybe
Cinematic
that's just
Universe.
the more
This is the Marvel
recognizable
comic.
I
It
look
is.
at it.
You could have gone down that route. I get what you're saying.
I look at it as book wise, the main continuity is 616. Film wise, the main continuity for Marvel is 616. Like there are two adjacent 616s. Like you have the film world and then you have the comic world.
A multiverse of
Yeah.
multiverses.
Does that make sense?
I feel
does.
I feel like the grand scope of things would be an eventual reset, and that they finally named our universe or our dimension or whatever, so that it plants the seed in your head that this reality could eventually just end, and then we've reset in another reality.
Yeah.
Or setting up things like X-Men, and when they do an X-Men, they're like, it's in the MCM, which I'm guessing, the Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. It's in there, but first thing on the screen is World 712 or whatever, So I think that's kind of like their soft entry, instead of trying to cram it all down our throats and worry about plot holes and everything. It could even be the same thing with like something like Black Panther recasting. If they do it on a different Earth, is it really a recasting, or is this a different Black Panther?
I think the main reason to establish what Earth you're on is so they know that this is the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that's whatever the hell Sony is doing.
I mean, maybe I can't even get that straight.
Well, no, and I think this leads into where I was trying to go with this. Do you guys think they're setting up secret wars with this? Because it seems like now that you have this incursion that Doctor Strange and Charlize Theron are going to fix, you could be setting up, like, Mordo is still alive back in the Illuminati.
Yeah.
Like, he's gonna be mad at Doctor Strange, like and want revenge for what happened. Like, and I guarantee he's gonna blame Strange for it all, not Wanda. But you could have these worlds collide. Like, you could have everyone in the MCU and then everyone else in the multiverse. So you get the X-Men, the Inhumans, the Fantastic Four, like, fighting, and have that, like, in the comics, that the battle world combines and one is destroyed. But I can see them combining everything together through that story. I think that's where they're going. What are your guys' thoughts?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I kind of like what Josh was saying earlier about, like, the ability now to, like, if you introduce the X-Men, it takes place on, like, Earth 732 or something like that. Like, I like the ability to tell these, like, multiversal stories, but not actually have it connected to the larger Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I think even maybe they're attempting to do that with Moon Knight, because Moon Knight doesn't feel like anything that we've seen in the Marvel Cinematic Universe so far, and we don't know necessarily how it connects to the larger picture thereof. So, like, I don't know. I think it would be interesting. It's going to be interesting moving forward on how this connects to everything else.
I think the argument can be made that you don't have to establish that it's on a different Earth or a different timeline for it to be part, like, of a series. Like, if you look at Logan, like, that the X-Men franchise timeline is all kinds of messed up. But you look at Logan, like, you don't really think about it that much. Like, Xavier's old, Logan's old, but most of that stuff happened, and it doesn't really matter what. But you have these characters, you can still tell a character-driven story in that world and not really establish, like, what Earth or timeline you're in. I don't think you need to be spoon-fed. This is Earth 616. This is Earth 712.
Well, I mean, Logan came out under the same banner that all the other X-Men films came out. There was nothing about Logan that conflicted with the other X-Men films. Nothing.
Yeah.
It was far enough in the future that there was no other future stuff that was like, when Logan was this old in this movie, so it could do that without worrying about what happened between things. MCU bringing in things, I feel like that would be a soft entry way to do things. And in regards to your question about Secret Wars, sure. I mean, I feel like they could be. Somebody else brought that up. A friend of mine named Mark brought that up. I feel like they could be dropping breadcrumbs for that. But what Secret Wars is in the MCU could be so much different than what it is in the comics. Think about Civil War, think about Age of Ultron, think about every other mega event that we've had. It always felt reminiscent of those stories, but they were clearly different takes on those stories.
Yeah.
And we can't forget that we have Invasion coming up before that. We've got the whole Skrulls thing coming up in Nick Fury's show, and whether or not that's just going to be a Nick Fury show event or if that's going to be bigger than the show Invasion, who knows. I was honestly surprised that we didn't get a hint of the Loki stuff in this one, because that is the only other property that's really dived into this idea of the multiverse and a big bad that is recognizing of that multiverse. And I thought that we'd at least get something that touched on that. But again, this felt really just a sequel to WandaVision and not anything else, which is not necessarily a bad thing. I appreciated that part of it, but I thought that they could have added some other things in there to connect it a little more, or to give us a sense of where we're going. Because, I mean, it just kind of ended for me.
Yeah.
Anything else we want to touch on before we wrap this up?
Well, yeah, I did want to ask y'all, do you think she's dead?
No.
No.
Okay, here's
no
my
one ever
only
dies
thing.
in Marvel.
I know, but they certainly kind of made it seem like she... And then the disbursement of her energy. I don't think she's dead either. I'm not naive as hell to think that she's dead or that they would waste her. My only thought that maybe this version of her is dead is that we know an Agatha show is coming. And I think maybe we all thought that it would be a prequel show. Well, if Wanda in 616 is dead, then Agatha is released. So the Agatha show could be a sequel to this in which she is free now. So that's the only reason why I think that maybe they could go in that direction. I certainly hope not, because again, I hate it when they waste good character development. But they kind of went out of their way to make it look like that's what happened.
Ryan's in the chat talking. Yes, but not completely dead. I didn't see it either. Lol. No, I agree. I actually agree with Ryan. Like, I don't think she's I think she's like injured, and I think like if she's weak, like that could let Agatha out too.
I didn't even think of that. That's really smart, because it's just an easy way to get her a show that's not a prequel.
And then you end the Agatha show with Wanda coming back.
Or the excuse is she's not dead, but they did have the line that she destroyed the Darkhold in all universes. So the excuse could be she's not dead, but what was really holding Agatha was the Darkhold, not Wanda herself. And then they could be like, that disbursement of energy wasn't Wanda, that was the Darkhold's energy. So I could see that being written in as well, and that's how they get around it. The Scarlet Witch is still out there, but it's the Darkhold that's gone, and which is more, knowing Marvel, it's more likely the case. But if she were to die, and this is the if we're going where Tony Stark, if we ever see him again, it's going to be a long time. But for all intents and purposes, right now he's dead. Same way with Steve Rogers, we're not going to see him for a long time. We probably will in the future, but he's gone. If this were her end, at least for the foreseeable future, do you think it's a worthy end? Do you think it's a lackluster end? What do you think about it if this is her end?
I think until they figure out what they're doing with the X-Men, to prevent any other Ralph Bohner situations, I think it's okay if we take a break from Wanda.
Yeah, that's kind of how I am too. I think that if you're going to do it, like now that we have the X-Men in our grasp, and I think this version of Wanda has definitely done great things, and she's been one of my favorite arcs to watch develop and unfold in the past 5-6 years. But the ending of this film feels like, to me, like the perfect conclusion to her arc. Again, going back to the Chris Nolan hero villain thing, like I would want to see like maybe not like, again, now that we've introduced the multiverse, you can introduce a myriad of other Wandas, and so I think I would want to see the X-Men version of this character moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, just completely agree. No notes. Like, yes, that's exactly it. You nailed it.
I would be satisfied if this was her ending. I think they nailed it. I think they really, if you can't be like, oh, we never got to see her full thing. I think ever since she just wrecked house in Infinity War, it was just like, man, can you ever imagine if she was on the other side? And we got that. I think the only thing that outside of the Illuminati fights and there's the fights in general, the only other thing that I thought was disappointing was the kids. I mean, either those kids have twins and they use the less talented twins for this movie, or Sam Raimi just doesn't know how to direct kids, because they felt significantly underwhelming compared to how they were good in the show. I thought they were fine in the show, but there were two moments in this film, like one when they were singing some weird ice cream song, and then two, how they acted to the evil version of their mother. It was just like, oh god, it's cringeworthy. I thought their scenes were terrible, and knowing that they've done better on screen, it just felt like Sam Raimi didn't know how to direct them or something.
I wonder how much of that is the difference between a TV set and a film set, because as far as I know, WandaVision was filmed in Georgia. Pretty sure they filmed this in London, so you had to take these kids from the States to the UK. It's all Devin's fault.
It's all worse over here. Don't worry about it.
That must be it. It just felt weird. Like when they were supposed to be scared of her, it felt it wasn't being sold on it. It felt like they had more depth and emotions in the show, and they were just so scripted in this movie, and it just felt weird. I didn't like seeing them on screen. I was like, get them off the screen. Every time they were on the screen, it was weird.
We could just blame the multiverse. That's just how those kids are in that universe.
Oh yeah, this is the one where they don't know how to act.
Where they're actual kids that were born and not just made up by Wanda.
Yeah. Although I did think, somebody else mentioned that too, of why couldn't they just be like, do you have to take her kids? Like, if this is the multiverse, is there not one universe where Wanda's dead and the kids exist and they need their mom? But and that goes back to the whoever said it here, was that it felt like they just kind of rotated around three universes when we're talking about a multiverse. You could have explored the multiverse from you had three characters, Strange, America, or Wanda, that could have given you just a little bit more time in these alternate universes. We've sat through so much longer movies than this. And 2 hours and 10 minutes is not a short movie. No. But it really did feel like it. It felt short compared to these other narrative journeys we've taken. And I feel like they could have gotten away with 5 to 10 minutes more of exploration or just depth to some of the content, to some of the themes, some of the things in the movie. But I didn't hate it. it. I know I'm the guy that loves to shit on things, but I think a 3.5 out of 5 sounds worse than it is, but I still enjoyed it. I walked out of it, impressed that they went certain ways. I agree with Josh that they dropped the ball and could have gone a lot farther with this. Could have taken it in a totally different direction, or at least taken more chances. But I am impressed at the movie we got, and it really does make me wonder what movie they turned down with Scott Derrickson if they allowed this one to happen.
Same.
There was that scene where that dude was crawling away from Wanda and she roasts him alive, and at that point I was like, okay, this is the Wanda I wanted, so I feel like they didn't hold back on certain parts like that.
It makes me wonder what it's like seeing this movie in 4DX. Like, do they just spray the scent of burnt hot dogs in that scene? Like,
Is it like that Spider-Man ride where like you felt the heat from Goblin's from Goblin's little things? That'd be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never seen a movie in 4DX.
I haven't either. It's
Lilo and Stitch ride.
Screen X is as far as I've gone with that, but 4DX, like I might check if I can. I'll check this one out in 4DX.
That's a thing in America. I thought that was only in China. Is that a
4DX?
thing in America?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I didn't know that.
There's one out near Philly near us.
Wow.
And I know like New York and LA have them. So maybe
I live in Omaha, Nebraska. I guess we just got the lame old IMAX and Dolby screens out here.
I'm surprised I have a Screen X near me where I live. But hey, if we end up in New York and say October, maybe we'll find a 4DX screen and go see something.
Yeah, there we go. There we go. Sounds good.
One last thing I wanted to bring up that we haven't talked about yet is the music fight.
Oh, yeah.
Bro, yes.
I thought it was silly.
Music fight.
It was kind of cool.
No, it is one of the best Marvel Cinematic fights ever.
Wow.
New bar has been set.
It's so cheesy.
I got questions though. Did it happen because in that universe, music is his power set? Because I've heard that.
Possibly.
I never heard that.
Because I've heard a few reviewers, and I agree with them. We're like, this was so just ungrounded, and it didn't have any foundation for why it happened. We've never seen him take things off the page before and use them as weapons, so it felt so like ridiculous. And then one person was like, it wasn't ridiculous. That is the Doctor Strange with musical powers. It's in the universe where music is power. And if that's the case, I feel like one line could have helped with that. It was a cool sequence, but I was like, oh wow, there's other things that Doctor Strange does with the animals and the dragons and everything that we've never seen him do before, so it's not a leap to say that he has learned more. But it was just kind of so fantastical that one line to ground it could have helped.
Yeah, for me, that was just the Sam Raimi campiness from like Army of Darkness coming through, and I was like, yes, like. And then
it was campy. It was fun, but it was
my
campy.
biggest complaint about it is that it's not on the soundtrack. Like there's a snippet of it, but not the whole battle. But
I guess. It did remind me of that, of the scene in What If, where Doctor Strange is just spending like years just deep diving and shit, and in this movie he's got so much more power set than his previous films, and I wouldn't have minded that. I wouldn't have, because it's not like he's spent the last 5 years learning all this shit. He was dusted with everybody else, so I would have liked to see a scene where he's just like, instead of being the drunk who's sad that his girlfriend's marrying somebody else, he's just the guy that's just back to the books. I'm going to learn all this shit that I didn't know against the Mad Titan, so that next time I'm in a situation, I can pull dragons out of my arm. I can pull music notes off a page and use them as weapons. I would have liked something like that, and I felt like the that could have added to the depth of the film.
Yeah.
I did think it was a cool scene. It's a cool scene.
Anything else?
There's a lot of cool stuff like that. The whole demon cape thing was cool. I've only seen this once, so I'm like trying to think of it all because I'm taking my mom to see it. I was out of town this weekend for a Comic-Con, so I didn't get to take my mom out for Mother's Day. So my brother's coming into town, and we're taking her to see this on Sunday. And she likes Marvel movies, but she's also like super religious, so I don't know how she's gonna take. She doesn't like horror stuff, so I don't know how she's gonna take this film. She was "Am I gonna like this?" And I'm like, I don't know. But stuff like the demons forming his cape and him walking around in the corpse of his alternate self, I want to see again. But I'm also like, please don't demand that we leave the theater. So we'll see.
Yeah,
we'll see.
All right. Well, I think that does it for our discussion on Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Putting a pause in
next?
here.
What's the next?
The next Marvel film will be Thor: Love and Thunder.
Oh, okay.
So we'll be talking about that in July on the Victims and Villains podcast, where you can catch me and Josh as the Marvel correspondents whenever Marvel stuff comes out. Because I don't think we'll be talking about Miss Marvel before that. We'll probably do like we did with Moon Knight and talk about a little bit about it in that review.
When does that come out? June?
June, yeah, first or second week of
imagine.
June.
Okay, so it gives Obi-Wan a little time
Yeah,
to itself on Disney
Good.
Plus.
yeah, yeah. You can find You Have to Watch This podcast on all major podcasting platforms. Follow us on Instagram. Like us on Facebook. You can find Victims and Villains on Facebook, Instagram, Twitch. Josh, where else can people find Victims? Victimsandvillains.net.
Wherever you guys get your podcasts from, and yeah, I think you said everything else.
All right.
You can find them next year at back at the Alamo, because from everything I've heard, the horror movie fest was a slam dunk, and we're gonna bring it back for year 2, right? Is that what I'm hearing? Can you confirm that, Josh?
Oh, good.
Indeed I can, and Devin better be there this time.
It'll happen.
Yeah.
My one request is I want the same Airbnb next year, because I love that place. It had a bonfire.
Was it great?
Yeah, we had a bonfire. It was amazing.
Oh, now I'm feeling
Yeah.
left out, feeling a little FOMO.
Yeah.
Me too. Trust me.
I'll have to come next year. Yeah, I have less an excuse. I'm on the same continent.
Yeah.
At least I couldn't make it happen. So next year.
Josh, where can people find you? And Fierce Lit.
You guys. Oh, sorry.
Other Josh.
Yeah, unless
Other
you're
Josh.
working for me. Fiercelit.com. I was just in Kansas City for Planet. I'm going to be in Des Moines in 2 weeks for Des Moines Comic-Con, and then Smallville Con in June, and New York Comic-Con back in October. Hopefully my buddy Alan will be there as well, but otherwise I'm online trying to get some new stuff done, but I exist.
Did I see you have a new book coming out?
Yes, there's some obstacles that are pissing me off right now in terms of printing and editing things.
Okay.
And I've got pre-orders for it now, so I'm feeling the pressure. But it's coming. It's coming.
Awesome.
Oh, but I will say I just had I didn't have a terrible weekend. I had a kind of a lackluster weekend. This past weekend I was at a smaller con. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't like amazing. But one awesome thing that did come out of it was I partnered with a new graphic novel artist. So I do have a new graphic novel coming down the chain.
Oh, wow.
It's probably at least a year to a year out, a year and a half out, because graphic novels take time.
Yeah.
But that's how I met Josh, was the graphic novel for my first book, and I can't wait to get back into that realm. So it's gonna be fun.
Yeah. Speaking of small cons, you can find You Have to Watch This podcast at the Main Street Comic-Con in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania on June 25th. We'll be there, Ryan and I. Devin, if he can get over to this continent.
I'll try.
You'll have to do London Comic-Con and
That
go
would
to
be so
Devin's
much
neck of the
fun.
wo-
He has to come
I
here
would love
first.
that.
That's the rules, because you got 2/3 over here. Is that
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
rule of majority? Okay.
Yeah. So I think that does it for tonight's episode. Thanks for tuning in. Thank you again to Devin and Captain Nostalgia for joining us to talk about Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. Josh and I will return to talk all things Marvel for Thor: Love and Thunder. If not before then, we might have some other things that we want to do talking Marvel here on the Victims feed, so stay tuned for that. Before we go, I just want to leave you with a quote that I think encapsulates everything that we stand for here at Victims and Villains, and it's from the film itself, and I forgot to bring it up during our main conversation. And it's from Professor Charles Xavier himself. Just because someone stumbles and loses their way doesn't mean that they're lost forever. Remember, there is hope out there, and you are not alone. For Victims and Villains, I'm Alan Cram, wishing you the best and good mental health.